Hello everyone, welcome back to Conversations with Yoders Farm. This is episode number 2, and I'm Eldon.
And I'm Lowell.
And today we are going to talk a little bit more in depth about the strawberry process. Is that right, Lowell?
That's what I understood, yes.
Alright, so I guess I'll just turn it over to you and let you just kind of jump into it, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, so we hope to give you a bit more of an in-depth overview than what maybe you have caught from our Facebook posts. And, we try to educate people through the year about what's going on, but we thought maybe we would record a podcast around just kind of the
timeline, maybe.
Timeline, life cycle, whatever, of
what we're doing when.
Of strawberry production. So we use the Plasticulture strawberry production system, which is just a fancy word to mean that we grow them on plastic hills, basically. It was developed out in California and adapted here to the U.S. Traditionally,
California is actually in the U.S.
What did I say?
You said it was developed in California. Anyhow.
Perfect.
It was adapted for the East Coast, I guess. Is that what you meant to say?
It was, brought to the East Coast and made popular here, and it's kind of worked its way from the southern part of the East Coast on up the coast. I think some people actually are doing it up in the northern states now. So, traditionally, strawberries were grown just in a field setting, and then on strawed rows.
Matted rows, is that what that's called?
Yeah, but, it has something to do with their name, strawberry, so forth. So that was how it was typically done around here.
Okay.
So this plasticulture system is slightly different, though there are similarities. So we plant our berries. Well, first we work the ground. You've got when you're dealing with making these nice plastic-covered hills, you have to have nice,
decent dirt to work
soil.
with. Right?
You've got plenty of loose dirt and free of as many rocks and clods as you can possibly have, which we do the best we can. The soil around here isn't perfect by any stretch. So we make we work the land, and typically we make the beds in August. We like to get them in a timely way, and then we're looking for a planting date. Some varieties we plant early in the month of September, closer to the front end, and then another variety likes to be planted a little bit later in September, mid to late September, and so that's what we do. These strawberries we get from nurseries. The interesting thing about them is the tips, which become the actual strawberry plant, is harvested off of mother plants up in Canada. These are they're harvested, kept in cold storage, shipped to a nursery, and then they're put into plastic trays. They're put under a intense mist cycle for several weeks. They grow little roots. Anyway, they become strawberry plants.
Plugs, we call them, till we get them and are ready to plant them, right?
That's right. So we buy many of them, and then we also raise some ourselves. So we get them and do the same little misting process here. So we're planting in the month of September. After planting, we're trying to make sure the beds are really wet to get good plant establishment. Sometimes we're running overhead irrigation over top, as well as our normal drip irrigation. Just depends on the conditions, but we have done that before. You're looking to get decent plant growth. It's nice to have sort of a mild fall. Mild on into October and into November. You're wanting it to be mild but not crazy warm is ideal. And then at some point you actually want it to get cold. You reach a point where your plant is at a good size to go into the winter, and then it's nice for it to gradually cool down and kind of go into a dormant state. Now, obviously, you're dealing with Mother Nature. Things like that don't always work, but those would be ideal conditions.
So if it stays too warm for too long, you can actually get some blooming in the fall, and
and you end up with plants that are just really too large. That's one reason we don't plant any earlier in September. Now, farther north, you're dealing with cooler weather. You would actually plant earlier than we do. And then farther south, they plant actually quite a bit later than we do.
So the main goal of, say, October and November is to mostly get a good root system established and a little bit of growth. Before I've
heard kind of like a cantaloupe-sized plant is what you're shooting for.
All right. And then we head into winter. They go kind of dormant.
Yeah, they slow down and stop growing during the coldest part of the winter. We'll use row covers as a way, like if we've had a cool fall, like last year we hit a cool stretch. Some of our plants were on the smaller side, so we row covered them earlier than normal using a floating row cover that's just a thin, lightweight fabric that light can get through. It's about 60% light transmittance.
I think that's the right word. Translucence?
Translucence, yeah.
I don't know.
It allows light to transmit through it.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Anyway,
light gets through it one way or the other.
60-70%.
Yeah.
And so we'll use that. If we need more growth, we'll throw one on earlier. If we don't need the extra growth, we probably won't cover until it gets pretty cold, like you're talking upper mid-teens, low teens.
So do we leave the row covers on all winter, or they come off until?
We'll typically, if it's in December and we cover, we'll leave them on for a period of time, unless it is abnormally warm or something.
Yeah.
We might pull them off for a while. You don't want your plants to get too warm under them and then start growing again before they're supposed to. So basically, we try to just kind of have them in a holding pattern through January and maybe into February. You don't want them to wake up too soon in the spring, but
basically, like children, you want them to go to sleep when you want them to, and wake up when you want them to,
and wake up happy.
Yeah, and if they wake up too early or don't get go dormant through the winter at the proper time, we can end up with some issues in spring then.
Right, and see the plastic, you're dealing with warmer soil. It tends to push these plants a little bit more than a plant that would be just out in the field.
In the bare dirt.
So matted row berries typically they bloom several weeks later. With berry on plastic, you're dealing with earlier bloom, which means earlier berries, but it also means more of a potential to be impacted by frost, which is probably the next thing we should talk about.
Yeah. So once we get through winter, I'm not sure when does winter officially end. As we head into March, we start looking for blooms, right? Is it?
Yeah, we'll typically start blooming sometime in March, and that's, again, very variable depending on the weather.
Yeah.
It can vary by a couple weeks each year. During this time, it's a good time to begin the weeding process. We go through, take off dead leaves, kind of clean up the plant. So you're left with a nice, healthy plant that helps with disease pressure later on in the spring. And
it makes for a better picking experience for everybody.
There you go, yeah. So, once you have blooms and you commit to, we're going to try to save these things, turn these blooms into fruit, then we use row covers, those same row covers we talked about earlier for frost protection. So any night where you're getting down into the upper 30s and you're going to be pulling those row covers on, and it's fairly labor intensive, but you just get out there and do it. Some farms use overhead irrigation. That's also an option. We don't typically here because our irrigation supply and system is a little borderline to do that, so we find it simpler for us just to get out and pull the covers on.
That can introduce some issues as well for the plants, potentially, right? As far as
overhead irrigation.
Yeah.
Well, you're throwing water onto your field.
Yeah.
And, drier is better, but
yeah, for the same reason we don't want it to rain, every day throughout March. It can be an issue, I guess.
Yeah, it's a very common practice. So many people do it, and are quite
works.
successful at it. Sometimes people actually will cover overhead water over top of the row covers, and you can take plants way down into probably the low teens. You can protect blooms.
Wow. We kind of have a backup system where we might could do that, but we've never done that to this.
Yeah, well, sometimes our backup system is we have some lightweight covers, so if we're we can get 8 or 10 degrees out of our normal cover of protection. So our backup system is to throw another cover on over top of it, double layer, and then you can get more like, I don't know, 12, maybe 14.
Okay, wow.
Maybe not quite that. It depends on the conditions and the wind and so forth.
So the backup to our backup is the water system that we sort of have but have never used, I guess.
Yeah.
And hopefully never will have to.
So anyway, you're on and off with the covers,
Yeah.
you're frost protecting, and we're recording this podcast on April the 24th?
Something like that.
Today. And we have our last frost protection event was a week and 2 days ago. We pulled.
You remember better than I do.
Yeah, we
I
pulled the
think
covers
you
on
pulled them, I didn't.
Monday evening, and we had everything tucked in very, very well. It was supposed to. The forecast was calling for 34. That's plenty cold enough for frost down at the plant level. And so we covered till very late at night, and it turned out it didn't get quite as cold as predicted, but we were still glad we had pulled the covers, so then we pulled them all off the next day. So
then later in the week, it wasn't supposed to get terribly cold, and it got chillier than you thought it was, so we watched the weather pretty carefully, but the weather is still an estimate, so it's not 100%.
Yeah, that's true. So, as we record this podcast, we actually feel quite comfortable in the extended forecast, at least as comfortable as you can get with something as unpredictable as the weather.
Yeah.
We've actually taken all our covers out of the field because we think we're going to be able to open for picking in about a week to 10 days.
Yeah.
So you don't it's not nice for customers waiting around out in the field with the covers there and the rock bags that hold them down and so forth. So we have all the covers out, and we're working on getting the rock bags out. So pretty much we've said, okay, we're done frost protecting for the year. At least,
of course, if something came up, we could pull them all back out.
Right. It would just be a lot of work to do that.
That doesn't happen.
Duplicating your efforts, basically.
Yep.
So during the spring, during this whole frost protecting event, you're beginning irrigation. These plants, especially as they start stretching, getting bigger, they use a lot of water. So we're running the pump most every day, sometimes several times a day. We're also injecting fertilizer right into the water, and this puts it right down in the little drip tube, which is in that plastic covered hill that we talked about earlier. We're doing that through this time. We're also we start our sprays during this time. We use fungicides. Research shows if you protect those blooms, do a good job of doing that, you don't have to do much in-season spraying. So that's what we try to do around here.
Yeah. We generally subscribe to the minimally sprayed kind of methodology, so we don't spray unless we absolutely have to. But the name of the game with that is protecting the blooms and the early stage.
Yeah, you're protecting against something called botrytis gray mold, and it's what turns a berry, what makes it mold.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah, you're protecting those blooms from that.
All right, so that kind of gets us up to where we open, I guess. Generally in the timeline of the strawberry cycle.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we are right now. Where we have little berries on the plants, and we still have blooms too. And everyone is asking me, including my family, and
including me,
calls, and especially Eldon.
Yeah.
When are we going to open? When are we going to open? People want to know. People want to know. Well, it's a bit of an inexact science.
Yeah.
Typically, it takes a month from bloom to red strawberries.
Yep.
So typically, because
there's a lot of variables in there.
It's daytime temperatures. If you go through a cool spell for quite a while, it'll stretch that out closer to probably 40 days instead of 30 days. So the fact of the matter is, I don't know.
For the record, I understand that before I ever ask you. Can you for sure pinpoint a day when we can open? But yeah, basically as soon as we can lock in a date, we can start telling people that, and it just makes life simpler for answering questions.
Well, I mean, believe me, we're all looking forward to being able to open up.
Yeah,
that's why we work as hard as we do to provide nice fruit for people to pick.
Yep.
It's just hard to pinpoint an actual day. And, of course, you're also dealing with, when you have a pick your own patch, you have to have enough volume to sustain, your number of customers. So
yeah, it's not like you hit one day and suddenly there's a ton of ripe berries.
The moment you see the first berry, you can't just say, okay, now we're open. So we'll typically pick some of the first ones, sell them at our store, and until we feel like we have enough volume, and then we may open, part of a day, and then have a day or two break, and then.
This year, it's kind of looking like we may end up opening towards the end of next week, so maybe a couple of days towards the end of the week, and then they kind of regroup over Sunday, which is our day off, and then we'll probably roll into the next week.
That's what we're hoping to do. Yeah. But there again, what's the weather going to be like between now and then?
Yeah.
Yep. It looks actually pretty decent.
Yeah. There's
nothing crazy.
Couple chances of rain.
Yeah, but temperatures, our nighttime temperatures are actually fairly warm, and our daytime temperatures are up into the 70s. So
good strawberry growing.
It's like good strawberry weather. Yes, sir.
Ripening weather, yeah. All right, so then the season usually is what, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
Yeah, so this year, if we start, right at the very tail end of April, or just well say May, we should run through the month of May, have berries. It always, you open up and it's a little slower picking right at the very beginning, though some of those first berries, usually they are the biggest of the season. They're nice and fun to pick. Yeah. It's a nice clean patch. It's one of my favorite times.
Yeah.
And then you hit peak production, and then there's always kind of a slide towards the end as your production drops off. Your berry size drops a little bit, though we try to do a good job of keeping the water and fertilizer rolling to keep that berry size up. But then you're also rewarded with sweeter fruit generally towards the end of the season, so that's a factor as well.
Yeah, so there's not a hard set 6-week season or whatever. There again, we ease into it at the beginning of the season, and then we kind of tail off towards the end, picking gets scattered. And generally, though, we're looking at a 6-week season or so.
Yeah, we should go into June a little ways.
Yeah. But there again,
like I say, they're still blooming out there. If you remember that month rule from bloom to fruit, we should still have fruit in a month's time. So yeah, we should go into June this year. Then we'll, we mow them off at some point. We take up the plastic, work our fields, and typically do that in July.
Yeah.
And then we're right back into working the soil and getting ready for next year.
You kind of need to, as far as lifting the plastic and getting your old plants, need to start they need to decompose before we get too far into the bed making process, I guess. So
we'll till them up and work them in.
Yeah. But basically, what I'm trying to say is that starts pretty quickly after our season.
Yeah, ends. I mean, there's something to do every month of the year.
Yeah.
In regards to strawberries,
it ends up being kind of a year-round process for hopefully a 6-week season or so.
Yeah, we can be picking in June and sticking those little tips at the very end of July. So
yeah,
that's pretty much year-round.
Yep. Very good. Well, that's pretty much the life cycle of the strawberry stuff here on at Yoders Farm. Varies or would vary in different parts of the country. This is kind of how it works here in Virginia. Florida, obviously they pick a lot earlier than we do. Up north they would pick later than we do. Just kind of how it works.
Other than that, it's been a good spring. Things are rolling along. Our tomatoes are looking good. We're getting really good volumes of tomatoes right now with the warmer weather.
Mm-hmm.
We're just trying to keep up with everything.
Yeah, that's always the challenge this time of the year. There's plenty to do, and mostly just depends how late in the day you want to work or how early you want to get up. So
this spring has actually worked pretty well. I've tried to adopt something, and it doesn't always work, but I call it...
Are you about to say something you're going to regret saying in a public forum?
I'm about to get philosophical.
Okay, go ahead.
We have been trying to stay out of emergency mode. In other words, think ahead. What will we need to happen, down the road, and then try to work at that
preemptively.
Can
take care of things. Yeah.
And things, it just helps everything go better.
Yeah.
If you can keep up with stuff, if you can do it a little before it absolutely has to happen, it helps everything run smoother. I suppose that works in most areas of life, but it works in a farm too. So
especially when you're farming with your immediate family, and there's always potential for some relationship struggles. Anything you can do to make sure there isn't extra stress is always helpful.
That's true. Yeah, just trying to stay ahead, and of course it requires some thinking ahead what needs to be done, and even though something doesn't absolutely have to happen that day, if you can get to it, it'll help you down the road. Check it off the list.
Yep. All right.
So that's your little golden nugget of wisdom for the day.
There you go. Maybe we'll have to have you come up with a golden nugget for every episode. All right. I think that pretty much covers everything we wanted to talk about in this episode, unless I'm remembering, unless I'm forgetting something. Anything else you want to add? No,
it's just we're looking forward to strawberry season. I know a lot of other people do too. It's really interesting once the weather starts warming up. I've been getting calls for weeks now about strawberry season, and I think sometimes people feel like it's a bother. Well, it's not really. I think we're excited just like everyone is.
Yep.
It's a pretty unique opportunity to come out and get some. I mean, I think they're some of the most incredible fruit that you can eat.
Yeah, I agree.
They're fresh. They're local. It's just nothing quite like strawberry season. Yeah. Nothing gets people quite as excited as strawberry season.
Yeah, so. It's a great time of year, spring. Everything gets green, and then you roll right into strawberry season. It's a good kind of entry into early summer almost, I guess.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to having a lot of people out here, seeing a lot of smiling faces and some red fingers, and just have people out enjoying the farm.
Yep. All right. Well, that is it for this podcast. If you want to listen to other episodes, you can head over to our website, yodersfarm.com/podcast, or you can subscribe to this podcast, Yoders Farm, Conversations with Yoders Farm, in your favorite podcast app. There are links over on the website on that podcast page as well to the majority of podcast apps. So if you want to subscribe to get future episodes, you can do that. We'd appreciate it. And if you have a couple extra moments, feel free to leave a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this. That always helps, supposedly, from my 2 episodes of history here. So, yeah, that's it for this week. This week, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. At least that's the plan. And we'll see you all later.
Take care.